The Connector Next Door is your invitation to meet the natural connectors all around us. They represent the everyday event planners who are energizing their communities every single day. Their stories are familiar, fun, and full of charm. Your host, Lisa Garrow, is a lifelong event planner and has been a connection strategy coach for over a decade. She knows events can become energized connecting points where communities can gather and grow. Let's listen in as she strikes up a conversation with today's Connector Next Door.
Evan Babins is a self-proclaimed adrenaline junkie, a tech-savvy event producer, and event industry trendsetter. Evan has managed event logistics and technical event production for many world-class clients like Nissan Canada, Equitable Bank, Kia Canada, Novartis, and Bristol Myers Squibb, just to name a few. He continues his passion for event production as the new events and marketing manager for Clear. He has hard-won, long-time experience in both the live, hybrid, and virtual event spaces. That experience has won him a reputation as someone to watch as events grow and change in the months and years to come. He believes it's so important that event professionals come together to share ideas, resources, and connections. When we open the curtain to reveal the experts behind the scenes, we can all learn what it means to create a seamless event production by connecting well with our event teams, partners, and attendees. Evan sat down with me for this virtual visit from his home in Toronto, Canada, and quickly shared how it's his desire to work with good people, doing good work for good clients. I am thankful to have met Evan, a truly good person in the events industry, and to be able to share our conversation with you all. Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to the Connector Next Door. And I have just been having so much fun meeting people from all over Canada and actually around the world. When we talk about the Connector Next Door, we're talking about people not just next door to me here. I'm based out of Calgary, but Evan, where are you coming from today?
I'm in Toronto, Ontario.
And I can see you, and you've got a bit of an ocean scene behind you there, and probably you're feeling like you'd like a little holiday or something.
I would love to be on holiday and not in the minus 28 degrees outside snowy weather.
Oh, is it there? We've got a beautiful Chinook here, so I won't rub that in too badly.
Jealous. Very, very jealous about that for sure.
Well, I'm so glad you're here. We are brand new friends, got connected just over LinkedIn, and I am thrilled to have this conversation with you because you're coming to the conversation as an event professional, as an event producer, and I'm really looking forward to the discussion around connection because you live and breathe this. This is something that you do personally, which is where I'm really looking forward to digging in today, but also professionally, you have lived this through your life. So welcome here. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
We always start with the question, what does connection mean to you? We go deep, we go fast. It's really about really looking into the connector's way and everything that I have heard, the times that we have had to chat about connection. I know that this is something that is really part of you, and it has been why you've chosen, I think, the career path you've chosen. But let's start there. What does connection mean to you, Evan?
Yeah, I think connection means taking people. I always say I want to work with good people doing good things for good clients. And I think that's the truth on connection is connecting with people, connecting with experiences, connecting with brands or clients, and bringing those all together to form one succinct network of these connections that can be formed from the producer side or from the audience side, from the experience side. So it's sort of layered in terms of how I look at connection and how it all comes to fruition.
And what I love about what you're saying is that it actually gives us a much wider view of connection because people, projects, ideas, when we work in the industry, quote unquote, in the events industry, that truly can be what makes or breaks an event for us is our connections and how we're connected to those people and those projects and our vendors and some of the partners. How has that played out for you over the course of your career? The idea of really making connections, does it come truly naturally for you, or is this something you had to grow into?
Yeah, it's definitely truly natural for me. I mean, I entered the industry, I like to say many moons ago, but not compared to other people. It's not that long ago. For me, it's about 11 years or so in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
And I started off DJing events,
Right.
DJing
Yeah.
corporate events and proms and weddings and galas and all this stuff. And then I realized that being in the spotlight is something I love to be in. I
Mm.
got the adrenaline rush from it. As a side note, I'm a huge adrenaline junkie outside of the events world. So fast cars, fast planes, fast boats. So the adrenaline is what I sort of leached onto from the DJing world. So being on stage under the spotlight in front of thousands of people watching you perform was that heart pumping adrenaline rush that I loved. I turned that into a career in event production where to this day, even in a virtual world that we're living in now, I still got that adrenaline rush. The moment before the event starts, the doors, physical or virtual, before they open, I still feel that pumping, that adrenaline going. And so that's where it started. And that's where it came from was that, going back to connection, the connection with the audience through music on stage was huge for me and was a huge piece of my developmental learning curve in the industry and as a person that I still take with me to this day when I'm producing any kind of event, big, small, in person, virtual, hybrid, doesn't matter what kind. I still bring those feelings and those memories of that feeling being in front of those people every day of my career.
I love that. What I love most about that is that there's a feeling that there's work, right? There's work in it, but we're driven. I think so many of us that are sort of long in the tooth when it comes to events, what keeps us coming back so often is that the lights go low, the team is ready, you've got the DJ there, you've got, the lighting is perfect, and everybody's buzzing. Like there's just that buzz in the room. And for me, I used to call that the candy moment, like where it's just like everything's now ready, and it doesn't happen by chance. These are things that are put together over months, over years in some cases, to get us to that point. But I love when you talk about yourself personally, where you are, whether it's an adrenaline junkie or I call it controlled chaos in my world, because I just love a bit of chaos. I love to have things thrown at me, and I'm trying to find the solutions there. But we don't do that in a vacuum. We do that within a community of people that also have our back, that also put their best foot forward. When you talk about sort of this marriage between the adrenaline junkie in you and making these connections, do you find sometimes you have to adjust the way you show up? I guess like a DJ might, when you've got a varied crowd out there, but do you adjust the way you show up in your connections depending on who you're connecting with, what the project is? Tell us a little bit about how that works for you.
Yeah, I think it's a couple of issues, a couple of factors that come into play. Number one, I show up, let's call it the same way if I'm talking to the CEO of a company or an entry level intern that I'm working with that's a volunteer at an event. So physically showing up is the same across the board. Everyone is treated with the same respect, the same, attention, the same, you are the most important person in front of me in my world as we're living right now. But in reality, when reality kicks in, I think showing up for, a client is probably, I'll call it priority. then I would say, and a lot of people may not agree with me in this, but after your client, the next piece of the puzzle that you have to show up for is your tech crew and the guys that are putting the show together, guys or girls, putting the show together and making it come to life. Because, like you mentioned, that I love that candy moment. I love that term. I get why you use it and how you use it, but I love it. I love it. It's such a good way of describing it. Um, for me, that moment, that magic moment, is where the planning and the event producer stops and the roll with the punches part of the producer world starts. That's the moment that you could have planned for months and years beforehand, and at this point whatever's going to happen is going to happen, and you have to roll with it. So that's also another, we can get into that in a little bit, but that's also another really fun piece of the event puzzle that comes together that I really enjoy. And that's weird to say that I enjoy that part, but it's true. And so going back to that showing up and how to be there for the connections, I think a good event producer, an event producer who, has done and put in the time to make sure the events are set up for success and the events will run smoothly as much as possible, plans for curveballs, plans for what ifs, plans for, in today's world, a keynote speaker getting COVID the morning of the event and now they can't show up and do their speech.
I hear you on that one.
So now what do you do? So it's all these layers and all these levels that go into it, planning things properly, connecting with the right people ahead of time, working with the right vendors who you believe have your best interest at heart as the event producer, and knowing that they will deliver A, what they promised you they will, but B, what your client expects of the delivery. So that's a huge connection piece. And then the third and final piece, which is really, at the end of the day, the most important piece of it, is the connection that your audience makes when they walk in the room. And when they sit down at the table and, you have the perfectly executed menu comes out to them one course at a time, and your performers come out perfectly timed, and your, keynote speaker is on the ball and hits all the jokes he's going to hit, and hits his right cues on his perfect cue, and the slideshow gets advanced properly. You don't miss any of those cues. So the audience connection to the show and to the content that's being delivered, that's the third piece of the puzzle. So I would say to highball it and to sort of overview it, it's like connection with the client to get the vision and to get what they want coming to life, connection with the team that's putting it together and executing, and then the audience connection to the experience is the third piece of the puzzle.
And how beautiful when that just becomes a seamless, like we see that in all our relationships in life, where if it's too cold in the room, if there's something off, we get distracted and it becomes this hiccup in the connection, or in some cases, it really is a distraction where really the message that the people are trying to get across from the stage or some kind of feeling we're trying to evoke, it gets messed up when the communication or some of these connections are off. So I love how you've described that. And, when you say that you're on for whatever is meant to happen, but for us to keep those relationships tight, that, as humans, that's what matters to us the most, is that we're still connected with the people that matter to us. When I talk about connection first events, it's really about how are we orchestrating everything, not just the people, but the project and all of the elements that put that event together, so that the relationships can happen, so that we can actually tangibly see light bulbs go on or connections being made or partnerships springing up from this. That's what gets me so excited about exactly what you're talking about. When a figure skater, when they're doing it well, it seems easy. but there's a lot of things behind the scenes that are moving and connecting with each other, and people like yourself that are just going for it and letting your expertise shine for the greater good here. And I loved what you said earlier on in this conversation, but working with people that are doing good. How did you say that again?
Yeah, I think it's like just working. It's getting people in your network that have your best interests at heart. I think is really the nuts and bolts of it, and like
Totally.
that comes from vendors to anyone. And it's funny you say that, like, with the figure skater analogy, that like, when it's a perfect routine, you don't realize what they went through to get that perfect routine. And it's funny, I don't know if you know, like there's a virtual event platform called Swapcard out there in the market. I'm sure you've heard about it, used it, probably been around. They did a blog post this week that I was actually quoted in, and it was all about like what's the predictions of the events industry for the year. And so my piece of it was, 2022 is the year event professionals are finally recognized for our contributions to the behind the scenes of how events come to life, both virtually, hybrid, and in person. And I think that's like such a great sort of, captures this whole mindset of like not only the connections that are being made in the audience between, let's say you're doing a financial event and you have, everyone from a bank, let's say, in the room, and that's whatever. People from different departments may not know each other, but they're all in the same room together at a holiday party or a gala. And you're putting people at tables that don't normally sit together or work together. So you're making connections there. But it's like the guests at the event, they just see their name beside a table number. They don't see and they don't know what went on behind the scenes to put them at that table, and the journey you went on as a producer, working with, whether it's a social committee at the company, or clients, or whoever it is that you have to get, you're working with to make this come to life. People think that event production is all food tastings and parties. And it couldn't be farther from the truth, right? The food tastings and the event and the parties is such a small piece of the puzzle when you look at that behind the scenes, behind the closed doors, behind the curtain, the months of planning that attendees don't know about and don't hear about and don't see. That's, in my world, in my mind, that's the beauty, is how you got from a scribble on a napkin at a table in a boardroom of here's an idea to this massive event being put on and produced in real life. To me, that's the beauty. The beauty isn't walking in the room and the event coming to life, because as a producer, you've made sure that it's coming to life and you've done your job. But the beauty is going from the napkin to the ballroom. That to me is, I feel like conferences and events should show that side. And I feel like there should be an education on that of like, yes, it's fun and it's great and it's a great party and it's a great event, or the conference is put on so well and everything ran smoothly. But how do we get here? I feel like conferences and events should show that side to make everyone's job come to life, not just the people that are highlighted at the awards ceremony for being, the best XYZ position in the company. But like, how did this event come to life? How did this become what it is? Let's start showing that side of event production and make it real and make the audience connect with the people that brought this event to life.
I used to be a camp director, and I remember what you're talking about is inviting the people in the kitchen, after you've had this crazy week with, hundreds of kids, and then you bring the kitchen staff out because they volunteered, they've taken a week off of their work. Exactly. and there's that celebration of it. But even beyond that, the celebration of their work, but also what we love doing here at Candy is pulling the curtain back and just saying, there's a lot going on behind the scenes and a lot of experts behind the scenes. And the people that we work with are often people that are doing this work themselves. And they're hungry. They're hungry for the information. They're hungry for the connections. They're looking for ways to do things better. And so the beauty of pulling back the curtain is not just saying, oh, well, now everyone can do this for themselves. That's part of it, because I grew up, I've been doing events for 30 something years now, all my life, basically in the zone since I was young. So I saw the behind the scenes growing up. But a lot of people, they're doing the work, they're feeling the frustration, they're not seeing the connections, exactly what you were just discussing, that this is years of knowing people and then knowing how those people and those ideas or that equipment fits together to make something work. So I love what you're saying. I think our environment as event professionals has really changed over the course of the last 2 years, where now we're looking at how do we share what we do? How do we give not just tips and tools, but really create connections where people now know who to call or they now know how this can actually work better and serve them better. And I tell you, there is no lack of passion out there with the people that I work with that are running their events. They're starting movements. They're, changing the game in business, or they're out there, in the community helping people that need to be helped. They're also running events. I love what you're saying, because I think the more that we can open the door and say, let's have this dialogue, let's have this conversation, which is, when we talked before we actually planned having you on the podcast, I think we were on that same page where it's just like, we really do need to start this conversation and broaden the conversation to people that really need that support. I would love to back up, because I know you said that you've been at this, like in quote unquote, the industry for 11 years, you said?
Yeah, I think it's 11 years.
11 years. When you were a kid, did you see this in yourself when you were younger too?
I think so, yes and no. As a kid, like I was in I would do like plays at camp, and I would do, in high school, they asked me to be in the plays in high school, but I was like, I wasn't interested in acting. I wanted to run the lights and the audio. So I did that. Yeah. So I actually came into this world via the AV side of things.
Interesting.
And so my technology was always around as a kid. Like I remember we had a computer from the time I was maybe 5 or 6 years old. And I think I have a younger brother, and he's always been technologically savvy. And I remember when he was 3 or 4 years old, we figured out on NHL 94, we figured out how to pull the goalie, and we would be playing the game on the computer. No and my parents would come downstairs, and it would be 70-0 that we were winning. And my dad was like, I don't understand how this is possible. And we figured out how to put a cheat code in to pull the other team's goalie. And so we just racked up the goals, right? So technology has always been a factor in my life. And so coming through the AV side of the world, that's how sort of that paired with DJing, that sort of propelled me into the industry and into the career that I've been fortunate to build for myself so far.
I love that story. Is your brother in technology of some kind today too?
No, he's in political PR, actually.
Oh, is he? Okay. Yeah. That's so its own shifting and changing. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Not in the tech world, but
no.
But yeah.
That's so fun. When you kind of think about where we come from and our personalities and how so many of my friends in the industry are coming from very diverse backgrounds, and it all, I believe, feeds into it. So you as a DJ, you knowing the technology, you coming into, the AV side, but now even in the work that you're doing to bring events in a very broad scale. Do you want to tell us a little bit about where you're at today and the work that you're doing and how it's fed into this career path that has been pretty cool for you the last little while?
Yeah, it's been pretty crazy the last couple of years, I would say for sure. So currently, I'm at a company called Clear, and so Clear is a technology startup, and we consider ourselves to be the all-in-one operating system for water. And so I'll sort of backtrack and explain a little bit what that means so people know where I'm coming from and why you mentioned I had an aquarium in my background on
Yes.
the Zoom call that we're in. So over the last 50 plus years, there has been different departments within local governments, different utilities. So the water utility, heating utility, gas utility. So we focus on the water utility. And so typically in the last 50 years, whenever the utility managers had to gather data and different data points of quality of water and amount of water and all these different data pieces, they've typically had to upload it to an Excel sheet manually, spending lots of time doing that. And so we came along and we said there's got to be a better way. And so about 3 years ago, 2018 or so, the company was started. And if you think about it, we're basically like a HubSpot for the water industry. So we are an all-in-one technology platform that you can partner from the plant to the tech to get all the data uploaded. And we're basically giving the utility worker their day back, that they don't have to manually upload to an Excel document. They can now do their job properly. And by doing that, we're helping to help the water crisis in the world globally. And so we look to, get the technology to all the different water utilities. And so my role at Clear is to bring us to different conferences, trade shows, events on the external side of things. And on the internal side of things, it's managing and producing, internal staff events, retreats, holiday party, and all that kind of fun stuff internally. And then helping out again with as part of the larger sort of growth marketing team, because that's really the where we're going in terms of growth is through the events channel, along with a couple of other channels as well that we're working on. But it's really cool to be in a startup. I've never actually been in a startup before this one, and seeing from being in agencies to working with end users, like end clients, like when I was at Equitable Bank, for example, um, how different a startup environment is, and how much in the 4 weeks that I've been here so far, I actually am really enjoying it, and I really am finding it's a really great place for me. The people are amazing. The work we're going to do this year is amazing. And at the end of the day, we're helping to solve a major world problem in our own unique way via technology. So while I'm not a tech guy by nature, it comes back to that love of tech, where it's not necessarily audio visual tech this time. It's, a platform and software and making people's lives better and easier through technology. So it's funny that it kind of comes a little bit full circle in terms of what I'm doing now and where I've come from and where we're going.
And what's really interesting in that is that so many companies, especially prompted by challenges through COVID, moving a lot of their operations online, using more digital solutions, virtual meetings, virtual events, the way that things are going right now, and having the expertise that you do of being on site, connecting partners and people in a very real-time, face-to-face kind of way, where your mind is there, and how you've experienced events and meetings and parties in the past, bringing that to an online environment. Do you feel that that is going to be a challenge, not just for Clear, but for any event producer now that's sort of rethinking how we do events in the future? What do you think that is going to look like for yourself, kind of to adopt that into more of a virtual setting, given your background where you really love events? I've got some friends that they're like, I didn't sign up for this. I didn't sign up for virtual. So they're really having a hard time making the shift. Do you think that you're in that same?
No, I don't think I'm in the same boat as that. I'll say I'm fortunate that I've been producing virtual events and hybrid events since about 2017. And so I was at an event production agency where one of our major clients was a pharmaceutical client, and they had a sales team of about 16,000 people around the globe, and they would get new approvals to sell new drugs every 5 to 7 weeks in a cycle. And so we were brought on to basically get their sales team the sales pitch, the marketing pitch, the presentation in real time as quickly as possible so they could get out and beat the competitor to get selling their product in the market. And so we worked with our technology partner, our AV, partner that we had when I was at that company, and we created what you could call today as the first, virtual event platform. So the sales team would log in via a SSO website, a single sign-on website, password protected, and they would watch this presentation that was basically like a live stream press conference that we would set up and we would execute from wherever the executive team of the pharmaceutical company was in the world. Generally, they were in their head office in New Jersey, but it took me to Chicago, it took me to Munich, Germany, it took me all over the world, depending on where they were. And so we would have our full broadcast AV team in the hotel. We had a full stage set up. We had, our DSMs, our monitors that they could, and the presenters on stage. We were able to pipe in Q&A from the audience through the platform. We were able to do basic polls and questions. And so having that experience back from 2017, when the pandemic hit in March of 2020, and a lot of event professionals started off with, confusion, frustration, not knowing the future of their job and their role and where things were going. And then eventually, I'll use the P word, even though I don't like the P word, they were able to pivot and to bring everything online. I really hate that word for a long time.
I'll have a vote for the hate the word. Yeah, I get it.
There's so many better words for it, but it's the one that everyone goes to. But so having that experience and having the connections of virtual vendors from back in 2017, my team at Equitable, we had almost no learning curve because it wasn't like, okay, figure out who can do this and who can help us. But for me, it was like, let me call Frank, because I know Frank has an entire virtual department at his AV company, and that's who I used the last 3 years. So let's get Frank going. So at Equitable, we actually did our first event like 3.5 weeks after the pandemic hit. And It was a fully virtual event for 500 people. It was our town hall, event, and it went off great. It was done well, and that's because of me positioning myself properly in the industry, creating those connections, creating those contacts, keeping in contact with those people over the years. When I had left the agency, I'd move on from that original company. I was at a new company at that point. But to be able to pick up the phone and make one phone call and say, hey, I need this done. Can we do this? And for the partner to be like, yeah, like when and where, and what can I do to help you? To me, that's the secret sauce of events is building up not only a database of vendors that and trust and will pull through for you in a moment's notice, but to be able to take vendors with you if you're moving from company to company, like I clear now, for example, I'm working with a promotional merchandise company that's going to do all of our, our internal swag and our conference giveaways, our trade show giveaways. I've been working with this company for the better part of the last 7 years, when in 3 different companies now. Mm-hmm. So to be able to bring, your network and your vendors and your partners with you wherever you may be working or whatever, job you're in, I think that says a lot about the connections that you're making. It says a lot about the value of the relationships that you're developing and you're building. And that's really the essence of event production, is having those people that when they see your name on their caller ID, they know that something is coming and something is happening. So they're ready to rock and roll, whenever you pick up the phone.
You had said that team leading is something you do. Yeah. I think it sounds like it's something you do currently and something that you've been doing for a while. But where does that also play into how you're leading teams through this as well? Like we have that extension of our vendors and partners, and how do you make that real for your team, where they're understanding what needs to be done, and then you're working together with them to make it happen?
Yeah, I think, a good vendor partner is really an extension of your team. And a close friend of mine who is a vendor partner of mine, she's in the sort of destination management side of the industry. She always tells me how she's an extension of me. She's the person to make me look good in front of the team. And she's going to do the legwork behind the scenes. And, it's so true of creating this team environment of not only the internal team wherever you're working, or if you have, direct reports that report into you or whatever, what have you, but that bigger team, that larger team of vendors that you're working with to make the event to life. And that comes everyone from, the person who printed the invitations to your event to, the guy pressing, mute on the microphone on the soundboard, to your stage manager, to, the intern at the door giving away your conference tote bags with the gifts inside the front door of the exhibition hall. Like, it's everybody, and everyone, as I've said, a couple of times, everyone is treated the same way, and everyone should be made to feel like they're the most important person in their job. Because in my world and in my mind, the best people should be doing the best jobs where they're suited to be doing, right? Mm-hmm. And if you know the best people, or you think you know the best people, like, use them for everything you can, especially in the world we're living in now. People have been in the industry, they've left the industry because they've been, maybe forced to, or there wasn't a position for them anymore. And we're seeing now, and I don't know if this is true in your world as well, but I'm seeing a lot of people coming back to companies they left where there was no role for them, and now there is, because there's a bit of a glimmer of hope for the event industry, as we hopefully get to the, let's call it the hopefully near the end of this situation. They're going to new companies. Like, there's so many event jobs being posted in the last month or so that it's so good to see the industry coming back to life. It was dark for a while, and I'm glad to see that, I was very fortunate to not be a day outside of the industry, thankfully. But again, that's because how I position myself, and I don't want to pat my own back too much, but I've been on BizBash's list of top 250 event professionals in Canada, and I've been on their list for the top 20 young event professionals to watch globally. So that's not by fluke, and that's not by a popularity contest. It's putting in the work, it's doing good stuff, it's making yourself known in the industry, connecting with people, literally how you and I did. Like 2 months ago, we didn't know who each other was in the world.
That's right.
And now we're best friends, right? And so it's like make those connections, especially, it's so funny. I had a lot of doors open for me in the industry by people more senior to me and people who I look up to. And so now I'm in a position in my career where I'm starting to do that for the next generation. And, I have a close contact who he's an entry level guy. He was DJing and he was doing like sort of starting in sort of basic sort of event producing, on the private side of the industry.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to get in the corporate world. So I connected a couple of dots for him. And he called me last night and he said, the company you put me in touch with, I had 2 interviews. They want me to give them references. Will you be a reference for me? I said, absolutely. I will. And he called me this morning and he said, I was given an offer. I'm starting in 2 weeks for this company. And so being able to connect people like this to employment and to, he like has been dreaming about working in corporate events for like 5 years since I've known him, and like, it's like crazy to have that feeling. And when he called me this morning, I got that adrenaline rush again. And I got that feeling that like, yes, like what I did made a difference in this person's life. And he has his first like corporate events job, starting a career, like he's going to go and do amazing things. Right. And so knowing that I played a piece in that and helped to make the connections that he needed to get that job, for me, gives me that adrenaline rush, like back when your candy moment happens. And
right.
It's the same feeling, in a different environment, in a different sense of the environment, but it's that same feeling comes back to life.
Well, and as we talk about event planners, really looking at reinvention, whether that's a rebrand of who they are and their skills and what are they bringing to the table, how they show up, what's important to them. People are really getting close to their purpose and really trying to find that. Like in his case, how exciting that is actually last night and this morning, and that's fresh for you.
Crazy.
And that actually helps fuel your fire, even if that doesn't necessarily relate to your world, but you're building out your team, you're building out your connections. And this idea of coming together where we're really leaning into the success of somebody else, because in the bigger picture, it matters. It matters that people are feeling seen and that there's somebody personally that will step in and be that bridge for them. I love that so much. I was going to ask you what would be the change you would like to see in the world. And when I hear that story, I'm like, man, if we could have more people. I think we do that naturally in the events industry. I think as event planners, it's just our lifeblood is to stay connected personally, but then also to find ways that others can sort of share in the joy and the fun and some of the stress, but leads to good things. That seems like something that would be incredible to see that in the world. But maybe to sort of close off our conversation today, what would that be for you? Maybe not everyone can be the adrenaline junkie you are, and maybe they don't get the same kind of buzz from that kind of phone call, but what would be something if we could adopt some of your connectors' way into the work that we do tomorrow? What would that be for you? What would you love to share with the people listening today?
Yeah, I think it goes back to, and I'm a big believer in this, and this is my sort of my life mantra is do everything you're doing for value. So what that means in my world is, if you're going to have a trade show booth at a conference and you're going to spend money on it because it's going to cost you money, make it have value. Give the value to somebody that's going to be affected by it. So whether it's the delegate walking around looking for a new, vendor that they want to work with or a partner they want to sign on, give them value. Whether it's your internal team and you're building a gala for your holiday party and you need to build a show flow for it, give it value. Give everything you do, make it happen with a sense of value behind it. And don't be afraid to spend money to get value returned to you, because as we know, things cost money and it costs money to make money. But a lot of people look for the easy, cheap, free way out of things, and the value proposition gets slashed. And if I'm going to leave people with one thing, it's like, don't be scared to spend to get value, but make it make sense.
Mm-hmm. And when we talk about investment here too, we also talk about energy, time, team skills, and money. And that unless we lean in, unless we say that this is worth it in the end, to make that investment, to make it happen, it may fall flat, or it may not have the results you're looking for. And ultimately in this conversation, you may not make those connections where people are like, oh my gosh, I totally need to know Evan, because he not just knows people, but he's got the ability to bring things together and make things happen. That's amazing. 100%. Thank you so much. I love this conversation today. Thank you for being with me. I would love for people, and I believe that you would be open to this, but how can people find you if they want to continue the conversation with you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram at Evan Babins. I'm around. I'm everywhere. I'm here, there, everywhere. My phone, my wife hates this, but my phone is always, always on, always beside me. She tells me all the time to put it down and turn it off. And I'm trying. I really am trying. I know she's going to listen to this, so I am trying to put it down and be unconnected a little bit more than normal. But yeah, I'm everywhere. Any platform, I'm always around.
Fantastic. And to have people like yourself that others can ask a quick question or somehow learn a little bit on how this works for you. It's so important to me that people make this practical. I love to talk. I love to, do the work that we do here at Candy, but if it's not really making a difference in the community, and if people aren't picking up something that they can use right away, it is what will change the world. And I think with people that are skilled at planning and promoting events, we are in a position right now where we can be the connectors of the future. We can be the ones that really hold that flag and say it's important for us to stay connected and to do it well, to add the value. Thank you so much for adding that. I think it's important for us to take it away and also look at what that actually looks like for us in our careers, but also in the events that we plan. So thank you so much again, Evan, for being here. I so appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
The Connector Next Door podcast is produced by Candy Event Consulting, where everyday event planners and their teams gain clarity, get connected, and grow in confidence. Subscribe at www.candyconsulting.ca to hear visits with everyday event planners who are putting connections first.